Villains don't always win the day, but sometimes they don't need a full victory to embarrass and shame their heroes. Now of course Thanos in the comics is still a big deal, but in the MCU I feel like they beefed him up even more. So much so that a lot of people compare Thanos to Darkseid. Thanos is kind of like Marvel's Darkseid equivalent. Even in the comics, sure, but the MCU reality lifted him up to be on the same level as DC's Darkseid and make him once again worthy of that comparison. Thanos is also obviously super overpowered in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because he is armed with the Infinity Gauntlet and wielding all of the Infinity Stones. If you can survive doing so, this would make almost any character unstoppable. But honestly, even in the comics when Thanos has not been armed with the gauntlet, he has managed to decimate entire planets and threaten the existence of life on Earth and throughout the universe time and time again. It's the Mad Titan's strong will and his determination as well as his physical might and prowess that honestly just makes him so deadly. And he's just very committed. He's a committed guy. Which villain do you think is the most committed? Let me know in the comments. Khonshu is an interesting one because most people wouldn't think of Khonshu as a villain. Khonshu is the god of the moon who also happens to be the being that gives Mark Spector, aka Moon Knight, his power set. At least, depending on which story we're reading, but for the most part that's how it goes. So with Khonshu being attached to a hero, you wouldn't really think that he'd be going up against Avengers, and yet that is exactly what happened in the age of Khonshu here. Khonshu manipulated Mark into doing his bidding, getting him to take from the Avengers elements of their power so that they could use those to fight against a greater threat, which was Mephisto. The problem with this being that while Khonshu did want to do this so that he could defeat Mephisto, who is obviously a really bad guy at the end of the day, Khonshu also wanted to take over Earth kind of and turn it into like an Egyptian afterlife, if you would. In the end, even Moon Knight turned on Khonshu once this was revealed and ended up joining up with the Avengers instead. The group of them were then able to beat Khonshu back together and he actually ended up pretty much imprisoned. But this doesn't change the fact that through Moon Knight, Khonshu was actually able to humble pretty much everybody on this team here. It's kind of unfortunate what happened to the Chaos King. He actually seemed like a pretty neat villain in theory. The event that he is primarily known for is Chaos War. Unfortunately, Chaos War took place right before the epic Fear Itself event in terms of Marvel chronological print history, and pretty much just became like overshadowed by that. Ultimately, it also felt less planned out. The Chaos King, also known as Amatsu Mikaboshi, is a cosmic entity and basically a Japanese god who met his end during the events of Chaos War where he was defeated. So we got an Egyptian god and we got a Japanese god. During Chaos War, the Chaos King used his powers to reverse life and death, meaning that dead heroes came back to life while those who had been alive were now deceased instead. As a Japanese kami, he has godlike powers, making him insanely durable and strong while also having supernatural abilities as well. The Chaos King's powers were more dark in origin though when it came to their magic type. Raquel managed to pull one over on the Avengers and honestly most of the cosmos and all of Earth after years later revealing that she actually had not died but had been alive the whole time, undercover and secretly scheming to unite the Kree and Skrull empires under the rule of her grandson. It had also been so long that her return was mostly met with confusion from a lot of fans at that point, because many who were reading her reappearance actually didn't recognize her at first. Even I had to do some digging to fully understand the importance of who she was. I finished that issue and was like, huh? Who is this? And then I was like, oh, Raquel, cool. Raquel was once one of the rulers of the Skrull Empire. Unlike Varanki, who was made queen after the Skrull's homeworld fell, Raquel was actually the Skrull Empress back when the homeworld was still around and doing well. Raquel first appeared back in 1979 and would perish in the comics in issue 257 of Fantastic Four in 1983, only a few short years later. She returned a few years ago in the Empire event where she was revealed to be Hulkling's grandmother, who survived the destruction of Tarnax 4 and who had actually been working, like I said, behind the scenes undercover as a Kree pursuer while putting into motion her plan to unite the Skrull and Kree empires together, which did work and we got the alliance. Ultron is an interesting character. The amount of times they have almost succeeded in destroying all of humanity and the Avengers is honestly pretty impressive. And while Ultron may have not succeeded fully in taking the Avengers out, they have at least taken down one Avenger at the time seemingly permanently, for a while seemingly permanently, because this character was gone for a long time until recently. That would be their creator, Hank Pym, aka Ant-Man. Ant-Man ended up being merged with Ultron, and although initially it was believed that he was still alive in there but just existing within a shared consciousness, we would actually later learn that he did not actually survive this process, and it was instead at that moment that he became deceased, despite some of his physical form still seeming to survive. However, as of Avengers Inc., Hank has returned, but still, for a while there, he was pretty perma-dead. The Progenitor is really a superhero who humbled the Avengers by simply judging them. The Progenitor put the Avengers to a test in multiple ways. One of the ways they actually challenged the Avengers and all of the heroes of Earth's strength was when they came to judge humanity. The other is when they challenged the Avengers in the way of their own capability, as Iron Man, aka Tony Stark, was actually one of the Avengers to work on creating the Progenitor, and even after that, the Progenitor still was not made to be a hero. Literally helped make the Progenitor, and then the Progenitor turned around and was like, actually I'm gonna judge all of humanity now. Not a great look. And this was a Celestial that was of course also based off of Tony Stark's nervous system. It was partially based off of Tony, and yet still not a hero. So what does that say about Iron Man? I do not know, although I love that Iron Man still got judged with a thumbs up. Hilarious. But regardless of this, the Progenitor also tested each and every Avengers member on a one-on-one basis. When they decided that humanity might not be worth saving, the Earth might not be worth saving, and in order to decide, they would actually have to judge each person on Earth individually. Some Avengers succeeded and passed this test, and some Avengers failed their tests. But ultimately, they opened themselves up to be judged by the Progenitor by being part of the Progenitor's creation, and also kind of put the entire world at stake. So yeah. Speaking of villains who just love to pull the wool over the Avengers' eyes, which of course many on our list have tried here, up next we are talking about Mephisto. During the 2021 Heroes Reborn event, Mephisto was revealed to be basically the big bad behind all of this. Heroes Reborn, or this version of Heroes Reborn anyways, was a world in which the Squadron Supreme were the premier superhero team of the world, being known there as the Squadron Supreme of America. In this reality, there were no Avengers here, there was only the Squadron Supreme, and we'd later learn that Mephisto was actually the one behind creating this Squadron Supreme and was actually in league with, get this, Phil Coulson. Yeah, in this event, Agent Phil Coulson, he's also evil. It was pretty crazy. Fortunately, in the end, the Avengers were able to figure out what was going on, fight back, and change the world back to normal, but still, it was pretty crazy that Mephisto was even able to change the world so drastically to begin with, and the Avengers were just like, I don't know what happened. I don't know. It was weird. For the most part anyways. I'm not even disappointed in the Avengers for being humbled by this next villain here. We're talking about Magus. Magus is the evil alternate of Adam Warlock, kind of like his evil twin. Basically. Magus's main thing is the Church of Universal Truth, which inherently doesn't sound very evil based on the name or bad, but it is actually very evil and very bad, just trust me. At one point, he threatens all of Earth's heroes when he attacks Earth with doppelgangers of each hero. Just as he is a dark reflection of Adam Warlock, each hero on Earth then has to face a dark reflection of themselves, and it's during this attack that he actually threatens to basically completely overthrow or, you know, conquer Earth and all of its heroes. Immortus is an interesting villain. Technically, Immortus is also Kang the Conqueror, but Immortus is also an alternate version of Kang from sort of like a different timeline. Time-traveling villains, time-traveling people, it's weird. Immortus has been a foe of the Avengers multiple times and has done a few things to humble them, especially specific members. For this point, I'm mostly going to talk about Iron Man and Captain Marvel. Immortus made it so that Iron Man would be a sleeper agent working for them, activating them and turning them on their own team, the Avengers. In the end, Tony did rise above Immortus' influence and ultimately sacrificed himself to save his team, going back to the side of good in his final moments, but it was a pretty devastating blow having their own team member turn on them and threaten to defeat, well, pretty much all of them at the behest of their nemesis, Immortus, aka kinda Kang. When it comes to Carol Danvers' interaction with Immortus, I'm actually more talking about Immortus' son here, Marcus Immortus. Still, it was through learning from his father that Marcus was able to take and also forcefully seduce Carol, and later managed to convince her to basically run away with him and leave the Avengers, which was a whole weird thing that happened. It wasn't good, but it also goes to show you just how influential Immortus can be and how dangerous he can be through that influence. And here I tried to save the best and honestly kind of the most spoilery theory, most recent one for last. That is, if you've been reading current comics, because this one is coming at us from Blood Hunt. For those who haven't been following along with Blood Hunt, it's the newest event over at Marvel Comics, at least at the time of this recording. It is an event that we're going to see throughout the summer. The whole of the Marvel Universe is going to have to band together as they deal with a massive global vampire invasion. And in issue number 1 of Blood Hunt, the Avengers are already not looking so good when they come up against a group known as the Bloodcoven. The Bloodcoven are a group of vampires that have fed on supernatural blood and basically each have supernatural traits. They use their powers, their special abilities to take on the Avengers, and in their first encounter pretty much handily defeat almost all of them. Yikes. Not only do they defeat the Avengers team, but they also defeat one of their sort of members as well, who is also like their headquarters, and that's their base that is known as the City, which is a member of the team as well because the City also has sentience. You know what's bad? When the Avengers are down and so is their base. Yikes. That's about it. I'm your host Amanda McKnight, and until next time, you stay nerdy.